stabbed 48 times.
I could never think of no one that would do something so brutal.
A lot of guys really liked her. She was a looker.
On New Year's Eve 2008, the quiet community of Crenshaw in Henrico County, Virginia, was jolted awake by the wail of sirens. Firefighters responding to reports of smoke coming from an apartment complex forced their way into the residence, expecting to deal with a routine fire outbreak. Instead, what they stumbled upon was a scene of unimaginable horror. The lifeless body of 26-year-old Keiona Braxton lay amidst the smoke and flames, with the unmistakable marks of brutal knife attacks all over her body, especially in her abdomen. She was weeks pregnant during the incident. Apparently, her attacker had fled and attempted to set fire on the crime scene. But who could have stabbed a young, pregnant lady so many times in the womb? And most importantly, why did it all happen? Join us today as we explore the horrifying death of Keiona Braxton. Death is truly inevitable, but how soon and horrifying it comes sends torrents of shock down the spines of all alive. Sometimes it arrives due to ill health, quietly stealing away precious lives with its cold touch. Other times it comes from the recklessness of hatred, envy, greed, and jealousy, like a storm sweeping through the desert, leaving destruction in its wake. While many go down by gunshot wounds or ghastly road accidents, 26-year-old Keiona, who was weeks pregnant at the time, would be beaten, burnt, stabbed 43 times in her abdomen and shot right at the spot.
Keiona Braxton was born on July 3, 1982 in Richmond, Virginia, the youngest of 4 children in a loving family.
She had one brother and 2 sisters. She was the baby.
Her family very much described her as loving, caring, infectious personality, devoted to her family and friends.
During high school, Keiona blossomed into a vivacious young woman.
She was maybe like 5'3". She was very curvy, full lips, dark brown hair, dark brown eyes. She was beautiful.
A lot of guys really liked her. She was a looker.
But Keiona never allowed herself to go boy crazy and always kept her eye on the future.
Back in our younger days, and it was different, guys, try to talk to her, but she was always brushing them away.
She was working at a restaurant when she got out of school. After that, she was working at a uniform cleaning company.
Keiona Cecilia Tyree Braxton was born on July 3, 1982, in Richmond, Virginia, to Joyce Braxton and Tommy Barksdale. She was known for her hard work and had a passion for painting her nails and styling her hair. At 26, she was anticipating a promotion at work, planning to marry her boyfriend, and had recently discovered she was pregnant. At 3 months pregnant, Keiona had been subjected to a merciless assault. An autopsy would later reveal the extent of her suffering: 3 gunshot wounds, 43 stab wounds, and evidence of blunt force trauma. The intensity of the attack spoke volumes about the rage that had been unleashed on her. As investigators delved deeper into Keiona's life, a disturbing story began to emerge. At the center of it was Kayla Armstrong, a 29-year-old woman with a history intertwined with Keiona's in the most dangerous ways. Both women were romantically involved with Kenneth Lee, a man whose complex relationships with the 2 women created a web of negative emotions and tensions. Lee was the father of Armstrong's daughter and the father of the unborn child Keiona's womb. The enmity between the 2 women had grown increasingly bitter, fueled by jealousy, resentment, and the constant struggle for Kenneth's love. Their interactions were full of distrust, and the unresolved issues only seemed to escalate as time went on, making it clear that their conflict had reached dangerous heights. As secrets began to surface, the investigators realized that the path leading to the tragedy was not just a simple love triangle, but a more sinister entanglement of anger, manipulation, and broken promises. The animosity between Keiona and Kayla was no secret, began far back when Kayla fell out of love with the father of her young daughter, Michaela. But in 2006, their feud had turned so violent that Kayla attacked Keiona with a knife, resulting in a felony assault conviction and a 4-month jail sentence for Kayla. At another time, she punctured her tires after both women ran into another altercation. When arrested and taken in by authorities, she claimed her enmity with Keiona was nothing serious other than baby mama and girlfriend issues. Despite her legal troubles, Kayla's persistent threats continued, and Braxton was living in a state of constant fear and anxiety, often going to courts to acquire a restraining order against Kayla. Despite the restraining order in place, Kayla's actions suggested a disregard for the law, often violating Keiona's need for safety. Her emotional distress was evident as Keiona repeatedly voiced her concerns to friends and family, but the mounting tensions were still unresolved. On the night of the murder, while Kenneth Lee was supposedly out of town, someone entered Keiona's apartment and launched an unsuspecting attack on her. Afterwards, the assailant stuffed 2 aerosol cans in the oven and turned the gas cooker on in an attempt to blow up the crime scene and erase traces. At exactly 6 a.m. on December 31, 2008, Henrico County Police were phoned to Keiona's apartment after neighbors saw smoke coming from an upstairs bedroom. The fire department forced the door open and found a gruesome sight inside. Keiona was found dead at the back of the apartment near the patio door, with bloodstains on her body, clothing, and on the walls. Whoever did this made sure the poor lady fought for her life for several minutes before giving up. An autopsy would later reveal she sustained 43 stab wounds to different parts of her body.
I got there and I spoke to the first arriving officers and the fire personnel.
From what we could tell, this does not look like an accident.
A closer look at Keiona's body also suggests foul play.
She was already covered with a blanket, but when we looked at her body, there were defensive wounds on her hands, cuts on her fingers, as well as actual stab wounds in her chest and belly area.
I just broke down. I couldn't believe my daughter was dead.
Especially the abdomen, and 3 gunshot wounds. Fingers immediately pointed to her live-in boyfriend, Kenneth Lee. But as authorities took him in for questioning, his reaction showed genuine horror and grief over the incident, meaning he had no idea. Also, Kenneth was not around that night, and his alibi actually confirmed he was out on official duty.
The guys really liked her. She was a looker.
Back in our younger days, and, it was different. Guys, tried to talk to her, but she was always brushing them away.
She was working at a restaurant when she got out of school. After that, she was working at a uniform cleaning company.
In the immediate aftermath of the murder, the investigation faced significant hurdles. Firstly, there was a conspicuous absence of physical evidence, as the attacker took it along after committing the crime.
Once the medical examiner did their autopsy, found out that Keiona Braxton had a gunshot wound to the belly.
It's like the killer targeted her in the belly for that very reason.
The ballistics report on the slug taken from Keiona's body confirms it's a .380 caliber round.
Detectives are thinking that whoever shot her knew where that gun was under the mattress, used it, and took it with them.
While talking to the police, Kenny admitted that he was hesitant at first about Keiona having a baby, but he'd come around and become excited about it because he loved her so much.
But who did it? Henrico detectives are about to learn something startling from Keiona's family.
This means no DNA links to the crime scene, no murder weapon, and no definitive proof placing them inside Keiona's apartment. The deceased family fought long and hard for justice, but none came. No one could be held responsible. Then, in 2010, a new Commonwealth attorney sent to the district reopened the case, determined to pursue justice for Keiona Braxton. Despite the lack of concrete evidence, the weight of suspicion was enough to lead to Kayla's arrest and interrogation. In October 2011, a grand jury indicted her on first-degree murder charges. However, Kayla managed to evade capture, becoming a fugitive and leaving behind her home and young child.
They had Kenny's little girl, and now they were going to have one of their own.
We knew Keiona loved kids. She was going to be one of the perfect moms. And, it didn't happen that way.
Not only was it tragic for Keiona to lose her life in such a brutal and gruesome way, she also lost her child.
Miss Braxton being pregnant, yes, it adds to the severity of the crime.
What if Kenny wasn't prepared for another child? An unwanted child can certainly be a strong motive for murder. So obviously, investigators wonder if Kenny could be involved.
For over a year, authorities followed countless leads, but it wasn't until January 20th, 2012 that they finally apprehended her in Chesterfield County. Kayla was found hiding in a closet, seemingly trying to disappear into the shadows. Investigators could not locate any DNA at the crime scene that would connect Kayla Armstrong or anyone else to Keiona's murder. However, They found that the night before the murder, Kayla had made multiple calls to Keiona's neighbors to check if Lee was at home that evening. While the police managed to crack her down and extract valuable information that could lead to a conclusive trial, there was something else they didn't see coming. As Kayla was awaiting trial for Keiona's murder, from her jail cell, she orchestrated a plot to have Kenneth Lee, the father of her daughter and supposed partner, murdered.
Month before the homicide trial was going to start, we received information from a individual in jail that Miss Armstrong asked her about getting somebody to kill Kenneth Lee.
Investigators begin monitoring and recording her calls. What they hear is stunning.
She made more than 250 phone calls to an outside source to hire them to murder Kenneth Lee. And she wanted it done in a way that was so gruesome that he would have to have a closed casket.
I was just shocked. She locked up and trying to put the hint out on him.
It's an astonishing turn. This is the guy that she was willing to do anything to keep for herself, and the father of her own child. Now she's all about self-preservation.
Kenneth Lee had a lot of circumstantial evidence that he was going to testify about that would hurt her cause in the homicide trial.
It seems Kenneth had helped the cops locate her whereabouts leading to her capture. While plotting Kenneth's murder, she had no idea a fellow inmate she had contacted for assistance was also cooperating with authorities. Through recorded conversations, Kayla was heard negotiating payment for the hit, even specifying that she wanted Lee's body to be left in a condition that would preclude an open casket funeral. The shocking audio revealed her cold calculation, her desire for revenge far outweighing any remorse for the life she had already destroyed. Thankfully, her plans, just like her prison sentence, would never see the light of day. In January 2013, facing the mounting evidence against her, Kayla took an Alford plea to voluntary manslaughter and pleaded guilty to charges related to the murder-for-hire plot against Kenneth Lee. Despite her pleas, she denied responsibility for Keiona's murder, describing herself as a loving mother and a child of God, acknowledging that the prosecution had enough evidence to convict her. She also pleaded guilty to charges of solicitation to commit capital murder and attempted capital murder related to the plot against Kenneth Lee. These pleas were part of a deal that spared her a potential life sentence. The hearing, which took place in April 2013, saw family members of all those involved in the case teeming to the court to hear the final verdict. They tried to make sense of how a fellow mother could go to such terrible extremes of killing a pregnant woman in cold blood. Kayla Armstrong was sentenced by a judge to a total of 30 years suspended. She received a 10-year sentence for voluntary manslaughter in Keiona's death and an additional 20 years for the attempted murder charge.
And then shot her to make sure she was dead.
She then lit the fire, hoping to destroy all the evidence. She took the knife and gun with her, dumping them somewhere. They were never recovered.
Kayla Armstrong got 10 years for the voluntary manslaughter charge and 20 years for the murder-for-hire plot against Kenneth Lee.
This was a win for the prosecution. It assured 2 convictions and significant prison time for Kayla Armstrong.
My reaction to Kayla getting 10 years for Keiona's death was unacceptable. Unacceptable. She gets away with everything she does.
It really is an unfortunate case all the way around. Because when you think about it, you have this daughter of Kenneth Lee and Kayla Armstrong, who now will not have her mother as she grows up. And then you have the family of Keiona Braxton, who they've lost their daughter, their sister, their niece, their friend, and they'll never get the chance to see her become a mother to that unborn child.
I really, truly miss my daughter, and my grandbaby would have been here, and I just miss her and the baby. Girls need to listen. They get out here and get wind up with the wrong person, and then things just happen, and you know, life just too short now.
Keiona Braxton was born on July 3, 1982 in Richmond, Virginia, the youngest of 4 children in a loving family.
She had one brother and two sisters. She was the baby.
Her family very much described her as loving, caring, infectious personality, devoted to her family and friends.
During high school, Keiona blossomed into a vivacious young woman.
She was maybe like 5'3". She was very curvy, full lips, dark brown hair, dark brown eyes. She was beautiful.
Back in our younger days, and it was different, guys, try to talk to her, but she was always brushing them away.
She was working at a restaurant when she got out of school. After that, she was working at a uniform cleaning company.
Earning her own way, she took a shine to independence.
Once she turned 18, she was ready to move on. I was sad when she left me, but I had to let her go. She was 18.
The judge remarked on her apparent lack of remorse and disregard for human life, underscoring the severity of her crimes. Meanwhile, Paulette mentioned that Lee is now taking care of his daughter Michaela and enjoying a wonderful life. If you like this video and want to see more, kindly click subscribe and turn on your notification.